the massive diplomatic shuttle descended through the swirling lavender atmosphere of Coral 9, its sleek metallic hull catching the strange light of 3 distant suns. J. Park sat motionless, his fingers tracing the edge of his communication tablet, eyes fixed on the alien landscape approaching beyond the thick, transparent viewport. At 32, Jay was not the typical diplomatic envoy. Where most would bring rigid formality, he carried an unexpected warmth and curiosity. His dark eyes held a depth that spoke of countless hours studying xenocultural communications. But something more existed beneath. A genuine desire to understand, rather than simply negotiate. The Coral civilization had been an enigma to human researchers for decades. Their complex social structures, intricate biological adaptations, and near-mysterious technological developments had made them a challenging prospect for first contact. Multiple diplomatic missions had failed, returning with nothing more than fragmented data and confused reports. As the shuttle touched down on a platform constructed from what appeared to be living crystal, Jay noticed the initial reception team. They were tall, perhaps 3 heads higher than an average human, with skin that seemed to shift between pale green and a soft gray, depending on how light struck their bodies. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical, yet with an underlying grace that suggested something more complex than simple robotic efficiency. A slight movement caught Jay's attention. Among the reception team, slightly to the back and slightly off-center, stood a figure that seemed different. Where the others stood in perfect symmetrical alignment, this individual's posture suggested something unique. A slight tilt of the head, a fractional shift in weight that spoke of independence. When the reception doors opened, the protocol was exact. Each Coral representative moved with calculated precision, their steps measured, their gestures minimal. Except for her. The figure from the back, a female Jay would later learn, moved with a subtle asymmetry that immediately drew his attention. Her name was Hana. Not that names meant the same thing in Coral culture as they did for humans. It was more a designation, a complex identifier that encompassed genetic lineage, potential scientific contribution, and social positioning. Among her people, Hana was considered unremarkable, a researcher whose work showed promise but who lacked the typical physical attributes her species valued. Her skin had a slightly uneven tone, with patches that seemed to shimmer differently under various light conditions. Her facial structure was not the perfect geometric design most Coral considered attractive. Where others had sharp, perfectly angled features, Hana's face seemed almost adaptive. As official introductions began, Jay observed more than he listened. The Coral diplomatic leader spoke in precise, almost mathematical language, each word calculated for maximum informational transfer with minimum emotional engagement. But Hana's eyes, they were different. They moved, they observed. They seemed to absorb information in a way that suggested something beyond the standard protocol. When she was briefly asked to present some preliminary research notes, something changed in the room's atmospheric pressure. Her presentation wasn't just a series of data points, it was a narrative of potential, of understanding complex systems in ways that transcended traditional scientific boundaries. Jay realized then that he was witnessing something extraordinary. While everyone else saw a somewhat unremarkable Coral researcher, he saw potential. He saw a mind that didn't just process information but reimagined it. The first day of diplomatic engagement concluded with standard protocols, scheduled meetings, data exchanges, preliminary communication frameworks. But something had been set in motion that no diplomatic manual could have predicted. As evening descended on Coral 9, with its multiple suns creating a light show that defied human understanding, J. Park sat in his assigned quarters. His communication tablet displayed standard mission logs, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept thinking about Hana. Not romantically, not yet. But with a sense that something significant was about to unfold. Something that would challenge everything. Both humans and Corals understood about first contact, about intelligence, about connection. Little did he know how profoundly correct that intuition would prove to be. The research complex on Coral 9 looked more like a living organism than a scientific facility. Transparent walls shifted color with temperature changes, and pathways seemed to breathe and move with subtle electromagnetic pulses. Jay Park walked alongside Hannah, listening more than speaking. Her research was unlike anything he had encountered. While other scientists presented data as cold, mathematical constructs, Hannah spoke about molecular adaptation like a storyteller sharing ancient legends. She explained how certain biological systems could transform themselves in response to environmental challenges. Not just adapt, but fundamentally reimagine their entire structural framework. Most scientists look at problems, she said, her voice carrying a slight harmonic undertone typical of her species. But few understand that problems are living systems waiting to be understood. Jay noticed how the other coral researchers subtly distanced themselves from her. Their body language suggested a mixture of mild discomfort and professional dismissal. They saw her work as interesting but not mainstream, her theories as provocative, but not immediately practical. During a standard research presentation, something unexpected happened. Hannah introduced a molecular simulation that showed how certain biological systems could potentially create self-repairing mechanisms across different environmental conditions. The room fell silent. Her colleagues' expressions shifted from dismissal to a strange combination of confusion and grudging respect. Jay recognized the moment immediately. This was more than a scientific presentation. This was a paradigm shift disguised as a research report. Later that evening, during a standard diplomatic dinner, conversations remained formal but charged with underlying tensions. The coral leadership clearly found human presence both fascinating and slightly threatening. Their society valued predictability, and humans represented anything but predictability. Hannah sat at the far end of the massive circular table, her posture suggesting both intellectual confidence and a lifetime of being considered an outsider. She would occasionally glance at Jay, not with romantic interest but with a sense of collaborative curiosity. Their conversations began innocently. Technical discussions about molecular adaptation, quantum communication frameworks, and potential interspecies research collaborations. But beneath these professional exchanges, something more profound was developing. Jay realized Hannah represented something unique in her civilization. While most coral researchers followed established protocols, she saw scientific exploration as a narrative journey. Her research wasn't just about collecting data. It was about understanding fundamental connections between seemingly unrelated systems. One late evening, during an unofficial research review, Hannah shared something unexpected. "My people see differences as problems to be managed," she explained. "But differences are actually the most fascinating communication systems in existence." Her statement went beyond scientific observation. It was a philosophical perspective that challenged entire cultural paradigms. The diplomatic mission was supposed to be about establishing communication protocols, trading technological insights, and creating preliminary cooperation frameworks. But something more significant was emerging, a connection that transcended official diplomatic channels. Jay found himself fascinated not by Hannah's physical appearance, which her own species considered unremarkable, but by her intellectual landscape. She didn't just think outside the box. She seemed unaware that boxes existed at all. As days turned into weeks, their interactions became more nuanced. They weren't just a human diplomat and a coral researcher anymore. They were becoming something else. Collaborative explorers of potential, breakers of established understanding. The coral leadership watched with a mixture of confusion and growing concern. Their rigid social structures didn't have protocols for this type of intellectual and cultural exchange. Jay and Hannah were writing a new language of interaction, one conversation at a time. Something significant was taking shape, a connection that would eventually challenge everything. Both their species understood about communication, collaboration, and the very nature of intelligent interaction. Neither of them knew it yet, but they were standing at the beginning of a journey that would reshape multiple civilizations' understanding of what was possible. The diplomatic halls of Coral 9 buzzed with tension. Jay and Hana's relationship had become more than a professional collaboration. It was a bridge between two completely different civilizations. Their joint research papers were causing ripples across multiple scientific communities, challenging established understanding of molecular adaptation and interspecies communication. Coral elders gathered in their grand circular chamber, their skin-shifting colors in waves of agitation. Traditional protocol demanded separation, maintained distance, preserved strict social hierarchies. But Jay and Hana were systematically dismantling those structures with every shared research project. "She is not considered attractive by our standards," muttered one elder, his skin flickering between deep gray and pale green. "And he is unpredictable." Unpredictability was the most terrifying concept in Coral society. They valued precision, mathematical certainty, and controlled interactions. Jay and Hana represented something entirely different, a dynamic, fluid approach to understanding that defied traditional categorization. Their first collaborative breakthrough came unexpectedly, a molecular communication protocol that could potentially translate complex biological signals across different species. Where previous research teams had failed for decades, they succeeded in months. Hana's unique perspective combined with Jay's diplomatic training created something unprecedented. She saw biological systems as living narratives, while he understood how to translate those narratives into practical diplomatic language. During a critical presentation, Hana demonstrated how their research could revolutionize medical treatments for multiple species. Her simulation showed molecular structures adapting in real time, creating self-repairing mechanisms that could potentially cure diseases considered impossible to treat. The scientific community watched in stunned silence. Rumors began circulating about a potential marriage. In Coral society, such a concept was almost revolutionary. Interspecies relationships were theoretical discussions, not actual possibilities. Their conservative leadership saw this as a potential threat to established social structures. Jay understood the political complexity. He wasn't just pursuing a personal relationship, he was challenging entire systemic approaches to understanding difference. Hana represented more than a potential partner. She was a living demonstration of how diversity could create extraordinary innovation. Their personal moments were rare, but profound. Late-night research sessions where complex molecular simulations danced between holographic displays. Quiet conversations that explored philosophical boundaries of communication and understanding. "We are not just studying science," Hana would often say. "We are creating a new language of interaction." The human diplomatic mission watched with a mixture of fascination and concern. Jay was rewriting diplomatic protocols through his interactions, showing that connection was more powerful than traditional negotiation strategies. When the official marriage proposal came, it wasn't a romantic gesture. It was a calculated scientific and diplomatic move. By joining their lives, they were demonstrating a practical model of collaborative potential. Coral leadership tried multiple strategies to separate them. They questioned research credentials, challenged diplomatic protocols, introduced bureaucratic obstacles. But each attempt only made their connection stronger. Jay's ability to navigate complex political landscapes combined perfectly with Hana's innovative scientific approach. They weren't just a couple, they were a dynamic system of mutual understanding. Their wedding would become a historic moment. Not just a personal celebration, but a symbolic demonstration of how differences could create something extraordinary. As multiple suns set on Coral 9, casting complex light patterns across the research. Complex, Jay and Hana worked together. Their hands moved across holographic displays, creating simulations that would eventually change multiple civilizations' understanding of potential. They were more than partners. They were bridges between worlds, living proof that true connection transcends physical appearance, cultural differences, and established understanding. The universe was about to witness something remarkable. The quantum anomaly appeared without warning. One moment, deep space seemed calm and predictable. The next, entire star systems began experiencing unprecedented disruptions. Scientific monitoring stations across multiple galaxies detected strange energy signatures, Conventional scanning technologies failed. Traditional response protocols became useless. Whatever was happening existed beyond current scientific understanding. Jay and Hana's research facility became the unexpected command center. Their unique, collaborative approach, which had seemed theoretical months earlier, now represented humanity's best chance of understanding the cosmic threat. "This isn't just an astronomical event," Hana explained, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. "It's a living system with adaptive capabilities. The anomaly consumed entire star clusters, transforming matter in ways that defied known physical laws." Quantum mechanics suddenly looked like primitive kindergarten mathematics compared to this cosmic phenomenon. Military leaders from multiple species gathered, their traditional hierarchical structures crumbling under the weight of this unprecedented challenge. Human, Coral, and 3 other advanced civilizations found themselves united by a single desperate goal: survival. Jay's diplomatic training and Hana's molecular research created an unexpected solution. Where others saw a destructive force, they recognized a complex communication system waiting to be understood. "We cannot fight this," Jay told the assembled scientific council. "We must communicate with it." His statement was met with immediate skepticism. Fighting had always been the default response to unknown threats. Communication seemed counterintuitive, almost suicidal. Hana's research revealed something extraordinary. The quantum anomaly wasn't just destroying star systems. It was attempting to communicate. Its method of interaction simply existed beyond current scientific comprehension. Their joint proposal was radical. Instead of defensive strategies, they suggested creating a molecular communication bridge, a method to translate the anomaly's fundamental language. Days turned into weeks of intense preparation. Every scientific resource from multiple civilizations was committed to their approach. Traditional boundaries between species dissolved as the threat became more apparent. The research facility became a living organism of collaborative potential. Scientists from different worlds worked together, their previous differences forgotten in the face of cosmic challenge. Hana's breakthrough came during a 72-hour continuous research session. Her molecular adaptation theories suggested creating a responsive communication matrix that could theoretically translate the anomaly's fundamental communication structure. Jay's role was equally critical. His diplomatic skills helped design an approach that was both scientifically precise and philosophically adaptive. He understood that communication was more than exchanging information. It was about creating mutual understanding. As the quantum anomaly approached critical proximity to populated star systems, their solution was prepared: a complex molecular transmission device that could potentially translate the most incomprehensible communication system ever encountered. The device looked nothing like traditional scientific equipment. It was organic, adaptive, almost alive. Its design reflected their collaborative approach: part scientific instrument, part living communication bridge. Military leaders watched with a mixture of hope and terror. This wasn't a weapon. This was an attempt to understand the most significant cosmic threat in recorded history. When the transmission began, reality itself seemed to pause. Strange energy patterns danced across monitoring screens. Quantum fluctuations created impossible geometric shapes that challenged fundamental understanding of space and time. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, gradually, something extraordinary began to emerge. The quantum anomaly started to communicate. Not in words, not in any recognizable signal, but in a language of fundamental existence that suggested the universe was far more complex and alive than anyone had ever imagined. Jay and Hana stood together, their hands touching, their minds connected. They had done what no single civilization could have achieved alone. They were facing the impossible. And they were winning. The launch platform gleamed under multiple artificial suns, a testament to collaborative engineering that defied traditional design principles. Jay and Hana's spacecraft looked unlike any vessel humanity or the Coral civilization had ever constructed. Millions watched through quantum communication networks. This wasn't just a mission. It was a moment that would redefine species understanding. Their spacecraft seemed alive. Its exterior shifted between solid metallic structures and something more organic, almost breathing. Years of joint research had transformed a simple transportation vehicle into a living communication bridge. The quantum anomaly waited in deep space, no longer a threat, but a complex communication system they had learned to understand. What once seemed destructive now appeared as a sophisticated living network seeking connection. "We are not just traveling," Hana explained during final preparations. "We are translating an entire universal language." Jay understood the profound implications. Their mission transcended traditional exploration. They were becoming interpreters of cosmic communication, breaking barriers between known and unknown realities. Scientific leaders from multiple civilizations gathered. Humans, corals, and 3 other advanced species watched with collective breath held. This mission represented more than a scientific expedition. It was humanity's most significant leap into cosmic understanding. The spacecraft's launch sequence began. But this was no conventional rocket propulsion. Molecular adaptive technologies created a transportation method that bent traditional physics. They would travel not by moving through space, but by fundamentally communicating with spatial structures. Hana's research had revealed that space itself was a living, communicative system. Movement wasn't about physical displacement, but about understanding fundamental connection languages. Their suits were equally revolutionary, adaptive molecular structures that could instantly respond to multiple environmental challenges. Where traditional spacesuits protected, theirs would communicate and integrate. Mission control became a symphony of scientific collaboration. Traditional hierarchical structures dissolved. Species differences became irrelevant in face of this extraordinary moment. As the spacecraft prepared for departure, something unexpected happened. The vessel didn't just prepare to move, it began to transform. Its external structure started showing complex molecular patterns that suggested active communication with surrounding space. Jay looked at Hana. Their connection had become more than a personal relationship. They were a living communication system. 2 minds fundamentally connected in understanding universal languages. "We are not leaving," Hana whispered. "We are becoming part of a larger conversation." The launch sequence activated. But this was no explosive chemical reaction. It was a molecular communication pulse that essentially asked space for permission to travel. Millions watched as the spacecraft seemed to breathe, shift, and then dissolve. Not destroyed, not disappeared, but fundamentally transforming into a living bridge between known and unknown realities. Scientific monitoring systems went crazy. Quantum communication networks exploded with unprecedented data streams. What was happening defied current scientific understanding. Jay and Hana were no longer just travelers. They had become living translators of a cosmic communication system that humanity had never imagined possible. Their departure was not an ending, it was a beginning. As the spacecraft completed its transformation, something profound became clear. They were not just exploring the universe, they were helping the universe explore itself. The mission control went silent. Monitors showed impossible data streams. Quantum communication networks pulsed with extraordinary information. Somewhere in deep space, a new understanding of existence was being written, and Jay and Hana were its primary authors.